Hi, Peg. I'll just check if you can hear. Thank you. Okay. So welcome everyone to this Thursday night talk at Mountain Cloud. It's our first talk since the summer session that ended on Sunday. Still feeling that momentum. At the session, we did the traditional close of the day ceremony each night. And part of that, if you weren't there or haven't done this, is calling out a verse to the Sangha. One line of it is, life and death is a matter of prime importance. Or one version is, resolving the matter of life and death is of prime importance. Ruben Habito has said that a closer translation of the Japanese would be, life and death is a matter of life and death. And there would be, hyphens, life and death. That's one way of describing what's going on in Zazen. Moment to moment, resolving the matter of life and death. One matter, resolved, resolving right now. The hermit monk Ryokan expressed this so simply in one of his death poems. I think he wrote 3. This one is 3 lines. Showing its front and showing its back, a falling maple leaf. In his talk on Sunday morning, the last morning of the retreat, Henry took up one of the primary tenets of Mahayana Buddhism. 2 truths are sometimes called the twofold truth. Truth 1, or what Henry called T1, is the conventional world, relative reality, form. And T2, truth 2, is essential or absolute reality, this one empty. So form, emptiness, 2 truths. But this is a provisional teaching. Actually, the first time I heard it, I balked. Ultimately, right now, there is only one world. Form in each and every iteration is manifesting absolute reality. There is nothing more. Showing its front, showing its back. Pen. Nothing outside of this. As Henry put it, T1 equals T2. At the retreat, we took up the theme of intimacy. Intimacy with all things. I like the word because of the dynamism it evokes, and it's personal. But intimate may not be close enough. Whatever you pick up It's you. There is no other. One, empty, constantly changing. During the retreat, we looked at a few pieces of Dogen's Genjokoan. One translation, Genjokoan, this essay, manifesting here and now, or actualizing the fundamental point. Dogen wrote this in 1233, and he put it first in his Shobo Genzo in 1252. There was a 75 fascicle version, and then later it came out with 95 chapters. The line that continues to resound from this retreat is the last line of the essay. Dogen writes, because the nature of wind is constant, the wind of the house of Buddhism reveals the great earth's golden presence and ripens the sweet milk of the long rivers. So just to unpack that quickly, the wind of the house of Buddhism, or sometimes it's the Buddha house. It's this practice, this manifesting here and now. You could say manifesting the nexus of form and emptiness, but as just one. Reveals the great earth's golden presence, this oneness, emptiness, constancy, or another translation, brings forth the gold of the earth. Ripens the sweet milk. It reveals great earth's golden presence and ripens the sweet milk, that milk of compassion. You could say, in this vast, empty world, that there is anything. Compassion. And then the long rivers, suffering. This is what Dogen believes we're doing here. Practicing realizing, he wrote, coupled, ripening the sweet milk of the long rivers. In the Genjokoan, this sentence is a comment on a koan. The whole essay funnels into it. The koan is not in any of the major collections that we take up in Sambo Zen, but it perfectly expresses the twofold truth that shows up actively in every koan. So here is the case. As Zen master Mayu Baoshe was fanning himself, a monk came up and said, "The nature of wind is constant. There is no place it does not reach. Why use a fan?" Mayu answered, "You only know the nature of wind is constant. You haven't yet grasped the meaning of its reaching every place." "What is the meaning of its reaching every place?" asked the monk. The master only fanned himself. The monk bowed deeply. End of case. Mayu Baoshe was one of Basso's disciple, this great Master Basso. He's fanning himself. Maybe it was a warm day. A monk, possibly thinking he can challenge the master, came up and asked, "Why use a fan?" This points to the so-called second truth. The Dharma, reality, is one all-pervading entirety, and it's empty, absent any border, any boundary, any hindrance. One dynamic constancy, wind. Mayu responds to the monk, "You only know the nature of wind is constant." Actually, he's being fairly kind. "You haven't yet grasped the meaning of its reaching every place." What is the meaning? The master just fanned. Mayu could have said, "You haven't yet grasped the meaning of its reaching every place or every time." Oneness, the whole of space and the whole of time, all here now. This one dynamic constancy, constant change, and so still. In effect, the monk is saying, if Buddha nature is everywhere, and it's constant, reaching every place, we don't need to do anything. We're fine. John Gaynor, the dear friend and Dharma teacher whose teaching I've been drawing on lately, he's deeply engaged with Dogen. John says, Dogen is intent on pressing us to realize that's not how this oneness world works. We're not fine. There's a lot of suffering. So much that we can't really cope or manage it, get a handle on it. This suffering, not just our own suffering, is a reason for pursuing this practice. I think it motivates a lot of us, got us to this path, gets us to our cushion. As John puts it, we are trying to enable that suffering to be reduced to nothing, and for this real world to be felt, realized, even if you're in a suffering state. This koan, Dogen's penultimate paragraph in the Genjokoan, speaks to the heart of suffering, suffering compassion, that inextricably connected couplet. The koan is doing that by expressing the immediacy and nowness of time and space. All of it. Exactly this. I've shared before this exchange with Ryokan Roshi at the end of what was a really wonderful week of teacher training with him. I think it was, maybe it was a session. And as he was preparing to leave, he came downstairs into the dining hall where most of us were, and just to say goodbye. And I said to him, just spontaneously, Roshi, please don't leave. And he said, I can't leave. I will never leave you. It's true. And it's amazing. Particularly amazing in the matter of life and death. Nobody can actually leave when they die. We don't go anywhere. We have an idea of death as when we stop breathing. John likes to point out we're in a life and death situation right now. Cells are dying, new ones are coming, renewing us without our recognizing it. What is life and death? Is it when this pen runs out of ink? Or the fan breaks, cutting down all the trees? The people in Ukraine being blown apart? Vayu fanned himself. The monk bowed deeply. Dogen writes, the actualization of the Buddha Dharma, the vital path of its authentic transmission, is like this. Fanning, bowing. Vyoshe is confirming how the Buddha Dharma works and trying to transmit it to this student. Maybe it did. Maybe it hit home, since the monk bows. Dogen goes on, if you say that you do not need to fan yourself because the nature of wind is permanent, and you can have wind without fanning, you understand neither permanence nor the nature of wind. Truth 2 equals truth 1. You can't get one without the other. We are compelled to act. That last line of the essay says what the fundamental action is, certainly for Dogen. This way, this practice realization, practicing realizing. The nature of wind is permanent. Because of that, the wind of the Buddha house brings forth the gold of the earth and ripens the sweet milk of the long rivers. For Dogen, Zazen, silent sitting, is all inclusive. It's also expressing constant change, this still state. You could say constant gathering and releasing. Dogen calls it flowing. One student deepening in practice wrote a short email. I slowly feel the Dharma oozing out through the imagined boundary of my skin, which turns out to be much more porous than I thought. Thoroughly porous. And exactly this, just as you are. Mayu's fanning and Dogen's comment into the Genjokoan, the essay begins with a 4-line summary, sort of the characteristics of our life in this awake world. You could say perhaps the results of practice, but it's unfolding, always now. So here are these lines. I'll just read them one by one. Sort of a frame around this amazing essay. It starts, when all things are the Buddha Dharma, there is illusion and enlightenment, practice, birth, death, Buddhas, and sentient beings. When all things are Buddha Dharma, this sentence just conveys oneness. All things without exception. There is illusion. There is enlightenment. There is everything. Each thing is this one. And a key aspect of that is equality. Whatever you pick up, this, each thing, all of it, everything is of equal value. Everything is just shot through with this oneness. There is illusion. There is enlightenment. Each is all of it, one alone. One and the same. But same doesn't quite hold up. There are not two. Birth and death, we think, are different. But in this oneness, each is all. Equality. How different would our human civilization be if we could really grasp this? We put up with so many inequalities. So here's the second line. When all things are without self, there is no illusion or enlightenment, no birth or death, no Buddhas or sentient beings. Everything is without self. No thing. Completely gone. Entirely empty. That's the first two lines. Then the third. Since the way is originally beyond abundance and scarcity. The way is originally beyond abundance and scarcity. There is birth and death, illusion and enlightenment, sentient beings and Buddhas. Beyond abundance and scarcity, beyond measure, beyond oneness and emptiness. The myriad things, Dogen calls them in many translations, the 10,000 myriad things, the myriadness of this world. When they come forth, these 10,000 myriad things, and illuminate the self, here it is, here it is. That, Dogen says, is awakening. We don't project out onto it, it comes. That's it. That dynamism. Constant change is the engine. And finally, the fourth line, Dogen's cadence to these three aspects of practicing, realizing. He writes, yet for all that, flowers fall amid our longings, and weeds spring up amid our antipathies. Kind of a famous line. We have likes and dislikes, and we suffer them. We're human, so we continue to ripen. Earlier today, I came across an article that Henry wrote for Lion's Roar back in 2014. Not a new discovery, but a fresh delight. The article is about trees and awakening our intimacy with trees. I thought of Ryokan's maple leaf. Henry writes, when all our ideas have fallen to the ground like leaves, when our sense of self and our attachment to life and death has fallen to the ground also, then the true life of the Dharma can bloom in us. We find it pouring forth all around, a creative force beyond all reckoning, in which we fully participate. Showing its front and showing its back, a falling maple leaf, or a cactus blooming after the rain, or a fan on a warm day. The gold of this earth. Thank you for this ongoing shared practice. Thank you.